I'm certainly into your perspective or talking about clarification or whatever as we kind of go, because you know, everybody has some sort of personal experience and insight, so that just adds if you're talking about specific instances, and we can then kind of break those down as we go too. I'm trying to figure out what the balance really is between fighting with a two-handed weapon against another two-handed weapon versus two-handed weapons against sword shield. And you're probably most likely going to be in the minority if you have a two-handed weapon out on the field fighting against a sword shield. So we probably want to spend a fair bit of that. But I mean, it's kind of up to you guys. I mean, if you'd rather just talk about the skills explicit to two-handed weapons, we can just stick on that. We can have a smaller amount of time to sword and shield stuff. I'm totally flexible in that.
Do they cross over?
Yeah, say.
Do they cross over if we learn the basic skills for them? Do they?
Oh, sure, certainly, yeah. But I mean, there's just a lot of things like when you're fighting somebody with a, you know, you're standing there with a two-handed sword and the other guy's got a spear. There's a lot how that attack and how you're going to interact is going to be way different than a guy with sword and shield. Generally, sword and shield, when you're coming in on somebody with a you know, two-handed weapon, is about aggression and control. You want to get on top of the person instantly, and you want to have your sword or your shield in a position so that you can control the two-handed weapon. So as you engage, because if you can't get the weapon into a either a downward position or getting them to retract into a defensive position, you're going to get hosed. They're going to beat the hell out of you. Or if you're not moving in aggressively enough, I see so many people where I mean, we'll get into this later, but they stand there and they go to move, but they're not really aggressing towards. They're kind of just, they stand at range and go, ha! And the guy with the pole goes, back! And just like skewers them in the face because they're not closing the range. They're not forcing the person with the two-handed weapon to be in a defensive mode. They're just walking into their offense is what it comes down to. So, but we'll talk about that more. Everything, though, would be applicable for the most part. There's a lot of things with a shield where you're feigning attacks, or you're putting attacks in positions where they're in like basically the blind spot. So you get somebody to commit by moving your weapon in a way where they lose track of it, and then you're basically going to bring it up out of the blind spot and jack them in the head or stick them in the guts, whatever. But you're gonna use the blind spot that's created by the shield to your advantage. So, guy standing there with a two-handed weapon, you got a two-handed weapon, not a lot to hide there. It's going to be a completely different interaction. So, but we will talk about the sword and shield stuff. Just how much time we spend on that is, you know, kind of up to us and how that works out. I wanted to start off by just talking about a lot of the terms with two-handed weapons are largely based around a lot of fencing. You know, essentially, I mean, you'll be talking a lot about center line stuff. You're going to be talking about feints and parries, and you're going to talk about lunges. You know, closing ranges where you're doing a lot of attacks where you're trying to get the opponent to move before you lunge, and then you're driving the pole arm out, and all that's pretty applicable. I'm not a rapier fighter. I'm not a fencer. I mean, I know enough to tell you how to do the blocks and how to weave through somebody's offense or defense, and I'll probably talk about it like that. But I'm not going to talk about it like I'm Mr. Rapier Fighter, because I can't. That's not my game. I know enough to deal with it when I have to, and that's where I kind of leave it. So, so anyhow, let's talk about, like I talk about the center line and looking at your opponent. I'll do like a real quick. I'm not the greatest artist in the world, but it'll be interesting nonetheless, I'm sure. If you have your general guy standing here, and he's got his, usually they're, you know, right-handed fighter for the most part. The way that I look at an opponent when he's standing in front of me with sword and shield, or even if he's just standing without, if you imagine the shield not there, as I think about from where I'm standing, a center line running right up through the center of that person. So from my perspective, I'm looking at a line right down their center, and if I'm looking as a whole person standing in front of me, I try to break it into a quadrant that basically comes across their breaks at their waistline, and then down the center here. So I try to break it into quadrants about how I'm looking at my opponent. So that what I really want to try to do is I want to come in and make my attack now, or I'm going to try to stay in most likely 1, 2, or 4, but most likely if I'm in a position where I'm in 3, I'm going to get hosed. Because what generally happens is if you get locked down in 3 here, you're down like this, and it's very hard to make a recovery. Now I can step away and I can bring the weapon up, but it's hard for me to get back on center line because, especially with a shieldman, there's so much control that they can exhibit in that quadrant. I mean, once they step in and they push down, it's hard to overcome that. So what I try to do is when I'm looking at my opponent, I try to keep my pole pretty much just a little above the center. Where these two are meeting, I try to be slightly above that, essentially like in the center of the chest. Let me grab another color. I guess I will do 3 colors. I try to keep the pole or two-handed sword roughly aimed in that area right here, just at the crossing of the shoulders in the middle of the chest. Yeah, go ahead.
When you say that you keep it aimed there, are you keeping the blade aimed there, the tip aimed there?
Yeah, why don't, Vardy, you want to step up here for a minute? We'll just do it with two-handed sword. Actually, if you want to grab a shield, yeah, just like so we'll look at the diagram with the shield. Go ahead and step on that side. So, yeah, turn a little bit more like that, like stand over there a little bit more. So, yeah, I'm starting like right about here. Now, we're not talking about range yet at all. I'm just saying, generally, I'm not being too far away from me because a lot of people get way away from their body and they get extended. And the thing is that your power pretty much rotates around the center that's running through, your center is running through the center of your head down through your pelvis, basically. And I want to keep this close as I can, and I don't want to be extended out over to leaning out too much, because I mean, if I'm doing that, it's very hard for me to move this with any power. I'm putting all the stress on my lower back and I'm extended. I really want to be in, but I'll start essentially like this, where my tip is up roughly at this point. Now there's a lot of things that will happen after that, but that's my essentially, like this would be my sort of relaxed ready position, and then my beginning position is going to be up, and I'm going to be pointing pretty much there. And so roughly right at this soft spot at the bottom of the throat, that's where I'm going to start. Where it progresses from there, but you'll notice I'm on the center line pretty much, and what that's going to allow me to do is as I step in and do my footwork, I'm not going to do everything where I'm extending away from my body as I'm moving. I'm going to do a lot of my footwork where I'm pulling in and I'm actually pulling the blade closer to me rather than pushing it further away from me. A lot of people they'll do like high guards, or they'll do like here, or they do like some crazy samurai thing, and you know, that looks cool and everything, but I guarantee you, if you're standing here, unless you've got an excellent plan in mind or some move that you've practiced over and over and over again, he's going to come in with much less skill necessary to block and control my weapon. And I want to try to start where he is wary of my range. Having this, you're going to gain so much more, because I can step and I can throw over the top of the shield. I can dip it. I can step in and dip below the shield, and then he's going to try to be controlling. So he's going to reach out with that shield, trying to meet me, and then I can just roll underneath very easily. And we'll talk about that. I mean, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but the idea is just having that ready position where you're not overextended, you're centered, and I'm pointing, roughly at this spot on my intended victim. So that's good. That's a good beginning. Let me erase this here real quick. And the thing I wanted to talk about is, as far as some of the cool mechanic things you get out of weapons, is that most weapons, if I'm holding a single sword, got my T-ons here, whatever, and the tip. When I'm whipping that sword around, generally what I'm doing is I've got the end of the lever, and I've got a cone. I can rotate it. There's my control. I'm controlling it here, and I can whip that around or gyrate it at the end, like I can roll it. If I have after a while, instead of gyrating it around the end where the handle is, I can get some gyration where it's like this, where I can move my hand and the center of the blade sits still. I'm moving my hand, and then the tip of the blade is actually moving. But a two-handed weapon, you can get a double gyration where it's kind of hard to draw, but you get one. This right here is a rotation. Your hand is still here when you're rotating, but you can get a double rotation where you basically have a crossover. This may be hard to see, but you get 2 points of control. If you imagine those dots are your hands. So if these are your hands, you can do a gyration on the weapon where instead of just holding it out and then rotating it around where I'm just holding this at the back, I can also do, like if I'm sliding up, I can have both of my hands, and depending on where they are, I can have them very close together, and I can do it as I'm rotating. I'm getting a gyration on both ends. And then the farther I go, I'm still getting a gyration. They're just smaller controlled circles. But what's nice about that, or what's cool about that, is that right now I'm doing it I'm balanced in the middle of the weapon. But you can telescope or pull in, and you can do like a double gyration. The farther you are on either end, the more you're going to drop into like a single gyration, which is more like a two-handed sword. But anything that you can actually slide up on the grip, including like a mace, anything that's got a haft on it, you can do that double gyration, and then that's when you can do some really cool and interesting things. Because if you get to that balance point, you have fast rotation. If you're way out here, and I'm on point, and I reach back here, and I take the long weapon, and I do like these big, long circles. The bigger, longer lever, you can put more, power into it, but it's going to be a lot slower, right? But if you're standing here and you slide your hands together, and you get that point of rotation, now it seems like I don't want to get my hands too close together. Generally, it's about probably 18 inches or so. You can get a really fast rotation. So when I'm standing here ready to go, I can thrust, I can roll my hands together, and I can whip it around really fast. And that's because I'm sitting at the center point. That center point of rotation is where you're really going to get the most acceleration, and the weapon actually is easier to manipulate because of that balance. You come to that equilibrium point, I'm ready to set to go. I can thrust up on somebody, and then I can bring my hands together. You can do Moulinet, strike the legs. It's easier to actually do it, and you notice it's not away from my body out here, extended out like this. I'm extending, but I'm keeping balanced, and then when I step in, I've got my hands, and I'm not going to raise up and stand in this. This is basically the default, I don't want to get my ass clubbed position. It's not, and everybody does that. I go bang with an attack, somebody runs in, and then people go, and then they run around like this forever and a day. And you don't have to do that. What you can do is roll in, and then somebody attacks, you can bring it up, you can block their first one, roll through an attack, or roll across the top, you take the leg or whatever, but it all comes with manipulating that balance and that rotation of the gyration in the center of the weapon with two hands. A lot of people, I don't know, they think you can't do that as much. It's less so with the two-handed sword because you can't get right in the center of it, obviously. Yes? Okay.
I've noticed a couple times you saying take the leg. How often do you actually do that? Because it seems that people are willing to trade their leg for your head.
Oh, take a leg for, well, okay.
You know what I'm saying? Since we don't lose the body part.
Sure. No, definitely. I think priorities for my defense with a pole is, well, the first thing I like to do is keep you at range so you can't hit me at all. But if you're closing, the first thing I'm going to do is block. But I don't want to fall into a pattern of defense. In the most, I mean, this goes through my entire fighting style philosophy is you should have a dynamic transition between offense and defense. You should immediately be able to counterpunch or take a blow, like an attack, and convert it into your own attack. I should, you know, I move in, I make an attack, I am leading, I am the one who's, you know, initiating. Somebody will come at me, they will attack me, and then instead of just completely folding and letting them control and being in defense mode, I will immediately counterpunch or strike back, or, you know, strike a leg or whatever. I don't want them to ever think that if they just do one thing, they can fold me up, and then that's all they have to do, their work is done. I want them to take that first strike and realize that they're going to have to work for every single step that they're going to make. And I know what you're saying. A lot of times you'll get the one strike, and then you'll come back in and you'll get in defense mode, and if I want to chop for the leg, they're just going to bust me in the head. Obviously, you're going to have some speed, and it comes a lot with this, because a lot of people go like this and they get their hands so wide apart that once they go here, there's no way you can rotate. You physically can't turn the weapon because your hands are too far apart. You can't get any rotation. So learning the technique of rotation, I think we'll probably spend some time doing that, doing Milanese, doing you know, an oar stroke roll, doing drills where we're actually doing the change hands. You hardly ever see people change hands, and I think it's because everybody thinks that you need to like spontaneously do both or something. And I don't know, it's crazy. Like the weapon comes up and they want to flip to the other side, and they go like, oh, I can't, like. And a lot of times it has to do with just the gauntlets won't come undone. You're not flexible enough, or the way it's cut out, it grabs on too much, which we have to overcome. There's definitely some good gauntlets out there. I mean, I've got some basic egg armor gauntlets. They seem to work pretty darn good. I can
What about when you get hit in the hand?
Yeah, that's
not
no fun.
There's
That's
not much protection with those.
yeah. There's not a lot of protection of that, but at least you have something that bridges. Everybody who fights with finger gauntlets, I like the dexterity of those, but there are not a lot of protection. And it would be really nice, to come up with that. I mean, that's a completely different subject. We should talk about different types of gauntlets and stuff.
We should.
But a good set of finger gauntlets that actually is protective could be awesome. I know that Marcus has been working on that for probably
10 years or more,
something.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know Morgan Dianiak?
Yeah, I've seen some of his stuff.
It's got a mitten, but then it's got fingers under it,
Yeah.
which is a really nice. I don't know that many people.
Yeah,
use
we'll
them, but-
definitely talk about those, but not everybody has, $400 or $600.
Yeah.
In comparison.
Oh, I know. Well, and that, I know, that I wanted to, that's one reason. Again, these
Yeah, it's cool. It's like,
I'll let him build something more elaborate.
in my opinion, if you're making a spear or a two-handed weapon, I mean, I know the limit's like seven and a half now, 7.5, and then it's like 7 pounds.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, yeah. I think that the optimum size for a pole should be, if you're standing relaxed with your arms spread, the half should be no longer than that. Because that's really all you can effectively use if you're going to be spinning it around. Any longer than that, it starts to get cumbersome and weird. And if you want a really fast rotation, and you also want to keep the head pretty minimal. I mean, you could do some artsy stuff, and you can add like foam stuff, and you can do clackers. And if you start adding clackers, the weight of the head like doubles. So you really want to. I mean, those are cool looking, but as far as like how effective that is when you're out and I mean, I need to slash you and poke, and all I need is those basic elements. And I mean, yeah, you could probably coat this with leather, and you could do all sorts of pretty stuff, but. I mean, this is just like the basic, get the job done, utility kind of weapon, definitely. But, say again? Yeah, that's just tape up there. I mean, I got it planed, and then what I generally do is like the section that I'm kind of breaking away from planed, I'll have an unplaned section at the tip, like I'll come up and then it's not planed top. So you definitely have blade definition. And I do like that because I like to be able to feel blade edge. When I go to turn, I like to be able to feather the blade so I'm not flattening somebody. You know, that I see that all the time. I see people with just like round swords, round weapons, and they never do any planing on them. And then you can't really define where the cutting edge is, and it looks really hokey. And you go slap like that, it's like, okay, it's not playing tag with sticks. You're supposed to actually be using a bladed weapon, and you would hit me with the blade on the flat side. So, you know. That's when the head construction like that is really nice, because then it's very defined, but it's definitely going to be impinging on your actual usage. You'll look pretty, it'll look cool, but it's not going to be very effective as far as like spinning speed. Let me, first of all, let's just start at a starting position. I can turn around this way if that helps you kind of transpose things. What I like to do is I like to keep one hand close in my hip, basically, and I always leave a little bit extra. I don't put my hand on the complete end. I like to leave myself a little reserve. So between like 6 to 10 inches from the end, because if I go out here like this, or I go to thrust, I want to be able to come back and get a little bit more if I need it. So you play the range. Essentially your maximum range, and then you got a little bit of extra if you need it later on. So hold a little in reserve, because people know where your actual maximum range is. It's going to be easy for them to play on that. You're the one who's going to be the range master who can control that. So I keep it tight into my hip, and this hand, I basically just let the pole rest in my palm. So I go palm up, and then I hook my thumb across the top. Now, I let this just kind of float, because you're going to be doing a lot of full cueing and stuff here, and this is kind of going to be your kind of like, each hand can be like a fine adjustment, but what really is nice is like, if you use, the back hand is like your gross adjustment, and your front hand is kind of your fine adjustment. Okay? So like if I'm going to do a gross movement, I mean, I don't yard my hand this way or that way. I just turn the back hand. You can put a lot of force without moving that front hand hardly at all. And you'll notice I'm not standing like this or like this really open. And the reason that is that this area right here, since that's your center, it's hard to move your center. So you really want to keep like the elbow down and turn sideways, so that if anybody's going to thrust at you, this is like the most common area to thrust at. Like if you're standing, I mean the most common area is to take it and thrust right here at the hip. If you're standing too open like that, so I advocate being a little bit sideways. Oh yeah, absolutely. It is totally. You're right though. I mean, like I was saying in the beginning, it's directly applicable. The thing is though, is that you get two hands to do all your control, and then you get to slash in ways you never could. It's worth like a kid. I've got my pull out here. Everything is very tight to the center of my body if I can do that. I'm not going to get really far away like this. I mean, I can reach, but generally this foot is forward, and I'm just going to kind of get in a nice relaxed kind of state. And one of the things that people are going to try to do right off the bat is, this is usually my test of how good a person is with a pole, is I can usually tell by how they're standing with it. But if they present, like if you're in a right-handed, if you're like this, the weakest point on this is actually when you're moving out of the grip. So what I'll do is I'll stand here and I kind of go, I'm not going to get the weapon. So I'll stand here and I'm getting ready to go and I'll go like, and I'll crack their weapon and I'll move it out of their grip. If they don't quite pull very often, it's just going to go flying out of their hand. They're going to lose their grip. So
Do you do that mostly with your backhand?
yeah, most of that is, so the front part is kind of like, is the fulcrum. Here's where I'm kind of putting I'm putting most of the power into it with the back. So we'll do different stuff because I'm also doing, that's what I'm saying, is it's hard to like show you the complex gyrations because you could go like this and the front arm is not really moving very much. But then again, I can go like this and then I can move the front arm instead. So like the front, it could be a setup. I could go like bam on top like this, and then I could use the front hand. I could pull, as I'm pull cueing it, as I'm sliding it forward, I'm pushing it with my front hand. So, but my set position is to basically use this as my pivot and not really move it very much, keep it in my guard position, and do most of my power back here. So if you think about it, if I'm going to move something and I want to pry it up with a lever, I'm going to put my fulcrum point or a stone or something close to the object, and I'm going to pry it underneath, and like the stone is going to be like here, and then I'm going to have the longer lever, and I'm going to reach down on it. So if you think of the front hand as kind of where the stone is, and then this is the lever, that's where I'm going to get all that power. So so the first one is kind of like just getting into that ready position and doing like that little hook, like that. You don't have to necessarily do it. Like right now, he's holding it opposite, So it's a little bit harder to do. A lot of guys will come up and they're holding the mirror, yeah, like that, and it's much easier to because from there you can just rotate your body and whack. I like to do that as much as possible. If I'm like standing in this position and I've got my hands on either side of my hips, I want to keep it in that close rotation because that's going to be great. You're going to have a lot of power in that. So, like if you think about this position is just basically standing like that, but you've got this hand's down and this hand's up on your hips. When I come into fight, I'm pulling it all from the hips when I'm rolling, except for when I'm going to range. I can go to range here, or I can just push away from me. But generally what's going to happen is, as my hands go to one end, what that's going to guarantee is that I have a slower rotation. Once my hands are together, it's going to be hard for me to rotate. So what I want to do is step in, I'll thrust, and then I'll step in on it like this, and I'll draw it back. I kind of move my body into the space. So like I'll go like thrust, and then I'll move in with my outside leg because I'm starting from this position, and I'll thrust. I'll bring this one in, and then suck the weapon back. Now, if you start to engage me, then I'll do a roll, or we'll get into the bull and eight. It is. I'm using the range of the weapon to, like a lot of the hand in the house or like in the Dachis, they have shorter handles.
generally they have shorter handles. They don't have the Turkin ones. So you're a little bit different. You're more like a regular broadsword in how you're flicking it around. You're still going to be doing most of the same maneuvers, but you don't have that same advantage, of being able to slide out to do the flips and stuff. But then again, you're not attacking with the other end. We're like trying to keep the attacks with the hitch ball down to a minimum. Yeah.
Hey, that's not fair.
Is that
Attacks with a hitch ball.
Yeah, that's right. But I remember talking to somebody about that. I was like, oh yeah, you get over the top of them, and the difference between SC and EMP is the hitch ball. You get it, just hit him with the hitch ball. And he's like, oh my god. Yeah, no. But yeah, you can still do a lot of that where this hand is pretty silent, and then the other side is rolling. You're still doing those rolling moves. You're still doing the rolls over the top. Still doing a lot of the strikes where you're taking it and you're rolling across. But since you have your hands closer together, it certainly doesn't have the advantages of a pole. I mean, that fact that you can slide your hands apart, you can slide them together to do spins, you're going to be way faster. There is a little bit of advantage, I'd have to say, between these Western ones where they've got the Keons and then they've got a hitch ball where that's helping in the balance of it. I really like a sword that's weighted forward, where all the weight's kind of up in the blade, and that's where like a Nadachi or a lot of the bastard swords don't have those on there either, or Katana. They have more of the weight going forward. I like that setup because it's easier to feel the flip of the weapon in your hand as you roll it over. A lot of people like this because you have a little more tip control, so you can just just flick it a little more. But the problem is with that style is, it's sometimes it's easy to just kind of stand and just get a kill like that. But I think that's a very limiting style. I mean, if that's your only trick is to go flick and then pop, as soon as somebody closes on you, you're going to just die like a pig. So then you're definitely going to be in that SCA backpedaling, circling, getting flubbed in the corner kind of thing. But I mean, for the most part, I mean, you can do a lot of those things. It's just when it comes to the slide, you're obviously not going to have the mechanics. So, I mean, I like fighting with it with a sword that's weighted like the Asian style ones. But of course, what's a Viking doing with a Nodachi? All right, but hey, that's all right. That's all right. But I killed them and I took it.
He got that from his Egyptian trainer.
That's right. The Egyptian trainer gave it to me. Okay, so let's so if we're gonna I'm trying to think the best thing to actually go at. Do you wanna just pair up and try some of the stuff that we've already been kind of talking about and then kind of pick it apart, or do you want to just go over? Let's go over some of those moves. Maybe doing a Molinet. You can still do with the great swords, but I usually like to do like Molinet. We'll step with the right leg forward, standing like this in my ready position, and then I usually do a Molinet on a retreat. I mean, you can do it from just standing here. In fact, we'll just try it from here. You pick the backhand up and roll the blade down, then you rotate your body, and you lift this hand up over your head, and then bring it across the top. So you're going to dip it down. It should be one smooth motion like that. You see how far my hands are apart from each other. It's not much different than where it is on the two-handed sword. It's a little bit different. It's like I'm starting out so wide to begin with, but if this was two-handed sword, I mean, I'm actually just doing a straight down roll. I have to lift this arm a little bit instead of keeping it stationary.
Saying you do that on the defensive arm?
Well, I'm saying the difference between a pole arm where you can slide, I want to keep it up like this, and I want to just keep this pretty stationary roll. But if you're on a two-handed sword, you're going to be down like that, right? So there, it's going to be rolling and then flipping. not really moving your hands from that grip position, but it is like they were striking and you were pushing the point down and then you're flipping it across like that. Now we're just doing it just like that, pretty stationary. But if you want to add to it, take this leg, roll down, and right about here, you start this, just move this hip back, move this foot back, you can strike. Let's do that a couple of times, like that. Now that's very two-handed. And here, and usually how I'm going to use my butt spike is I'm going to thrust up, and then I'm going to get somebody to come in.
Oh yeah.
So they draw me up like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wheel it up, and then I'm going to lift my arm up on this side, and then I'm going to use this side as the pull cue. So before I was sliding in this hand, push, and I'm going to have my hand up like this, and then I'm going to pull cue here. So now I see a lot of guys go like, as soon as they push up like this, they try to just kind of bring it in like this. There's nothing wrong with that, but if I'm standing here, do I want to get in like this, or would I rather stand here and go like this? You know, I'd rather like reef on him and give myself the range than actually step in. But a lot of people will do it like, they do it very impulsively. They're here, and then they whip this around, and they almost do like a punch or something. But yeah, you don't want to punch somebody in the head like that, obviously. But if you're here, you can just crank it in. I like that a lot better. Seems to work pretty good. It's a little bit harder to do. I mean, you can still do it with that one, correct? Yeah, excellent. Okay. But you have to have a little bit of half to work with, so it is harder to do with you're obviously not going to butt spike with a two-handed or, yeah. Okay. So let's talk about like, I'm just kind of whipping through there, but then we'll like stand in line and we'll do the shots. The other one was the oar stroke, and that's a down one as well, where you basically disengage like this, and then you roll it back over. So I'm here, I thrust, you strike, and then I just crank it over the top. But you're going to roll it to here and crank. So you're not going to do the full rotation, you just roll it to here, and then crack it. Now, you can just do the rotation, or you can do, as you push in, you can roll, and then I can extend it as well. So I can keep moving back as he engages. I can step away and throw it. So it ends up coming in more like a two-handed sword, but it's very fast. Now, I know that's most of the time your tendency, and a lot of people's tendency will do it to be like, as soon as you strike, to be up like this and blocking. And there's nothing wrong. I mean, I haven't really gone over just a straight slot shot down the middle. There's no reason that you can't do that too. But there's not as many body mechanics in that. So coming here, striking, throwing, coming back, somebody knocks you up, or they come in to bind you, and then you come up and then just come straight down. But I mean, I think that comes to people pretty naturally. There's not as many body mechanics, and since we're really not talking about, I mean, the Molinet and the oar stroke are really ones that I like to use as I'm retreating. So if you're pressing towards me, I really want to roll the foot, or I really want to. I want to be moving away with you. I want to be fading into me as I take the shot. I can do them up close. You can come up, you can do a clench like this, and I can push you off and then chop. But still, I'm taking a step back from you. I mean, if I can get you to move away from me, then I can take the shot forward. But the mechanics, for me, I think they work a lot better as a fading. And I think that people, if they're fighting two poles together, they're either going to be trying to stay at range or they're going to be jumping like right on top of your head. Generally, you're not going to stand here for very long. It's going to be like this, throw, or it's going to be like rushing in on you. There's not going to be a lot of that middle ground. So you want to pair up and just why don't we do that? Won't we pair up and then just try Moulinet on each other? Pair up with somebody. Bart.
Hey, Hayes, you want to pair up with me?
Well, I don't think Davin really wants to do it because his knee is bad.